Good day, one and all. My name is Donato, and welcome to today's podcast. And for those of you watching on YouTube, is it a vlogcast? Vlogcast. Anyway, the other week, you may recall on my podcast, You, Me, and Sub3, I was interviewing none other than Christy Ashwanda, New York Times best-selling book of The Good to Go, and it's all about recovery and the science in recovery. But today I have another specialist science with regards to training and how we can help best to get the most out of our training. So a very warm welcome to Dr. Garry Palmer. Hi, Gary.
Hi, Donato. Thanks for inviting me along.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. And it's, as I say, I thought that was a good segue. And when it's an absolute pleasure and a privilege having someone with your skill and knowledge on here. But rather than me give all the wonderful intros, if you want to give us and those who are listening, watching, a bit of an intro to yourself and your background. Obviously, you are a doctor. You can explain what you're a doctor in and so on and so forth, and how many years experience you have in what you do. So, yeah, Gary, over to you.
Oh, crikey, where do I start? Yeah, how long have you got?
Oh, we've got all day and night. Yes, everybody loves listening to us. So over to you, Gary. Go for it.
Good stuff. So I'll work backwards. I'm now director here at Sports Test, and the main focus is looking after athletes, giving them exercise testing, giving them training programs. I've been doing that now for the last 17 years. Prior to that, I spent probably 8-10 years lecturing sports science at various levels at universities. And prior to that, I spent 4 years doing my PhD out in Cape Town. So Professor John Hawley, who's big into carbohydrate metabolism and nutrition, was one of my PhD supervisors. And the other one was the famous, infamous, whatever you want to think about him, Professor Tim Noakes. So they were my two PhD supervisors. And if we wind the clock back, even prior to that, so I think I finished my PhD in around 1996, something like that. So you have an idea of my vintage.
Yeah.
I did an undergraduate degree down at Chichester, and Peter Keane, for those of you who've got a cycling background, will know him that in the run-up to Barcelona Olympics, he was coach to Chris Boardman and then went on to be performance director at British Cycling and was sort of the Dave Brailsford pre-runner. So that's my background. But I've been a runner since, I think, probably about 10 or 11. So I've been running.
Wow. So you've been running 10 years. Or is it 11? Sorry, 21. Are you 21 ago? No.
40 years now, nearly.
Wow. So that is quite a career you have there, Gary. And obviously, so your doctorate is in sports science.
It's from the Cape Town Medical School, so it's actually a PhD in physiology, and that's the title. I'd say it's specifically exercise physiology because I was based at the Sports Science Department and then the Sports Science Institute out there.
Yeah. So that's quite. I mean, that's quite a CV and background. So everybody who's listening, obviously, Gary knows what he's talking about, and it was great meeting you the other week, and where we were talking about various training plans and things. And a lot of people who watch and listen to this, there's people of all different abilities. So there's guys who are running under 3-hour marathons, and there's people who I think they might call themselves weekend warriors, where they go out running, doing exercise at weekends. So quite a mixed bag of runners and athletes of all different abilities. But are there, obviously you being a specialist in terms of what you do, and myself when I was a beginner, I didn't really know what I was doing and sort of just thumbing around. What are the benefits in terms of for someone who's beginning or looking to start running, or maybe kick-start it again? Because I know a lot of people have been through, losing their mojos, they want to restart again. What are the benefits of having someone like yourself helping them, irrespective of what level they're at?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things, and I think for me, if I've got someone coming in to see me in the lab, the biggest thing that I can give them is a real clarity in what their strengths and weaknesses are.
Yeah.
So it's all well and good knowing that you're a runner, knowing what you want to go and do, knowing what you want to focus on. But it's understanding that individual, understanding their strengths and weaknesses. And, like me, I probably fall into that category at one stage that, as 21 to 25, I was running really well off the bike in triathlon as well. And then sort of moved back to London, had a period of sort of, stuff in life goes on. And although I was still training, I wasn't really racing. And then I've come back to running, sort of 10 years ago now as I hit 40. And I wasn't performing as well as I wanted to. And despite the fact I do what I do, and sometimes it's do as I say, not as I do. Despite the fact I do what I do, I'd still be tracing the times, chasing the performances, chasing the sessions that I was doing when I was a 24, 25-year-old knocking out 32-minute 10Ks.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work. And so to be able to give athletes, regardless of whether they're really new athletes and completely new to the game and either trying to step up distance or improve their performances, or give athletes that have been training for year upon year upon year a clear insight into their physiology and their way their body works, gives us a really good heads up. And so it's knowing your strengths and weaknesses. What are you good at? How good is your endurance? How good is your fat burning? Truly, where's your threshold? What's your anaerobic capacity like? So we look at that spectrum and then look at the events that you're trying to do. So we can then match the training that we want with your strengths and weaknesses. So, in my mind, it's a case of, there's a couple of things I'd say. One is, train smarter, not harder. So actually work out what your weaknesses are and train to improve your weaknesses. And so that way we're sort of maximizing our training time, minimizing the waste time, and then maximizing recovery. So, as a guest last week was all about recovery and how you improve. Recovery is actually major impact, aspect of training. It's not just about going out and smashing yourself hard. So that's probably the first thing. The next thing that I really am able to give people, again, regardless of age, ability, weight, gender, or anything like that, is giving them a true understanding of where their actual personal training zones are. Yeah. So instead of going out training blindly and this watch that I've got and
we've all got them now.
I should have put my
£1,000.
I should have put my purple strap on tonight to match the background, but depends. It changes with the
t-shirt. We like the bright yellow one.
No, that's fine. Then I've got a bright orange one as well, just in case to match your top. But this tells me my training zones. Now, it gives me a good understanding, but I don't believe they're 100% accurate. They're not that specific to an individual. They take, data pool, let's pull some numbers in, let's get you some outputs, and that's better than nothing. But one of the problems that I find, and again, it doesn't matter whether you're a recreational runner, whether you're completely new to the game, or whether you're experienced. Most athletes that I come across, their easy sessions aren't easy enough.
Yeah.
And because their easy sessions aren't easy enough, they then don't recover properly. So then their hard sessions aren't hard enough.
Yeah. And that's a common mistake. I think when I went out running 3 runs a week, I just ran at the same speed.
Yeah.
So my short runs were one speed. My long runs were the same speed as the short runs. And then I'd tire out.
Well, again, it's the way that the brain regulates. And there's been work done on this. And I've done some stuff on it where the athlete will hold a pace that they perceive for the distance they're going.
Yeah.
So if you've decided you're running for an hour, you will run at the pace that you can hold for an hour.
Yeah.
Now, if you get to the end of that hour and someone says to you, look, you've got to run an extra 15 minutes because you've got lost or there's something gone wrong, your body is still capable of carrying on. You're not like an animal that will run as fast as it can until it keels over. Your body regulates the pace. Now, that's going down a completely psychological route and not on the same route. But it's these as training tools, and it doesn't matter whether it's £1,000 expensive fancy piece of kit or £9.99 from Boots, but it accurately still tells me my heart rate. Yeah, that gives me an indication of what's going on internally.
Yeah.
Once I've got that, I can start with an athlete, giving them specifics. And there's a lovely anecdotal that I use when I'm doing seminars and lectures, and you probably come across this yourself. So, 8-10 years ago, I'm trying to think, 2000 and bit more than that, 12, 14, 13 years ago now. Again, sub 3 hours at London, and I was working in Hampton Court, and live in the Midlands, so I was going down to Hampton Court on a weekly basis. And to get there for my 8 o'clock client, I'd leave home at 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Now, if I had a 10:30 client rather than an 8 a.m. client, I'd still have to leave at 4:30 in the morning because we all know what the M25 is like, and we all know what the motorways are like. So I'd have to get there at the same time of day as if I had an 8 a.m. client, but I have now 2 hours to fill of my day. So I'd get there early. And I'd go out for a run around Bushy Park. So I'd cross the river, there's various loops I'd do around there. And on more than one occasion, there's me shuffling along at what I thought was my steady run pace, 5 minute per K pace. Now, bearing in mind, I was aiming for a sub 3 hour marathon. I'm running 5 minutes per K pace as a long, steady run.
Yeah.
And I'm overtaking the Kenyan internationals.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you see these sort of group of.
And you thought, am I going a bit quick?
No, I'm still only run 5 minute per K pace. And you catch them and you overtake them and you think, hang on a minute, I'm going to scrape a sub 3 hour marathon. And these guys are all running sub 2:10. What the hell am I doing? Now, again, there's a balance in there because they're going out and running 120, 140 miles a week, whereas my sub 3 was based on 40 or 50 miles a week.
Yeah.
So, it's not quite holding true. But the problem is, if it was meant to be an easy run for me, my easy run was too fast.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of people, when they're using their Garmin's, obviously, for those who are listening, we didn't prep this. Gary is just talking from his own experience, and I'm trying to relate in terms of my experiences. I've found that a lot of people, you've used the words train smart, not hard, which is obviously my singing from my song sheet as well. It's all about being smart. We have limited time, but the pushing our bodies too hard, we know that it breaks after a certain point. But I've often had this debate with people, and I've talked about the heart rate training and low heart rate and so on, where there's a lot of people out there who bang the drum about training at paces, and it's important to train at pace. And how do you expect to hit certain goal race times if you're not training at these paces? Whereas I believe it's not the pace, it's the effort, and effort can only be measured by heart rate. Would you agree with that?
Well, so again, there's different camps that I might sit in, and it doesn't depend on the day of the week. But as an example, if I've got an athlete, and it'd be great, I can send you over some diagrams, and maybe we can stick that up to your clients as well. But what I would often look at is I look at various speeds. So in the first portion, of the warm up. So people think I just do a max test. It's far more than that. I'll run a warm up profile where the athletes will run for 15 minutes, face mask on. I'm measuring oxygen uptakes, efficiencies, fat metabolism, carbohydrate metabolism, all the typical physiological measurements. And typically I'll run someone for 5 minutes at marathon pace, 5 minutes at half marathon pace, and 5 minutes at 10K pace.
Yeah.
It gives me an understanding.
This is on a treadmill.
This is on the treadmill.
Yeah.
I do bike tests, and we do that as well. But I'm talking specifically runners here. So, and what I'm looking for is I'm looking to try and work backwards. And when I've determined where their metabolic threshold is, so the point that they've completely shut down fat burning, they've hit 100% carbs before they go anaerobic, I then work training zones back from that. And again, a lot of this work is related to my PhD work that I did out in Cape Town, where, and again, that's another 20-minute discussion going off in a different tangent. But I was looking at, they were ingesting radio-labeled carbohydrates, and then we were doing muscle biopsies before and after exercise to see what muscle fibers we're using, what muscle fiber types were being used. And we come up with the principle of really trying to smarten up training and get people focused in what they're doing. So we know we're working on a specific training zone and specific muscle fiber type. So the key is if I can identify you as a runner, a recreational, or if I can identify your endurance training zone, it's not related to pace. Because if I've got an athlete that comes to me that's doing lots and lots of 10K work, they're going to have a high threshold, but not necessarily a good aerobic base. And whilst things like, Daniel's tables are absolutely fantastic, if you've got a well-balanced runner.
That's Jack Daniels, for those who are not familiar. Yeah, Jack Daniels tables, they're a brilliant set of tables, and you can use them really well, but you can have people that are completely skewed from the norm. Yeah. And that's the problem we've got. So if I've got a recreational run that comes in that runs 2 or 3 times a week, they don't have that full spectrum of capacity. Yeah.
If I've got someone that's been specialising in 5 and 10K racing and they're trying to step up distance, they don't have the aerobic base. They've got great anaerobic capacity, but they don't have the aerobic base.
Yeah.
If I get an ultra runner that comes in, they've got phenomenal aerobic base, phenomenal fat burning. They get to threshold and they go pop. They can't run any quicker. So again, they don't have the top end capacity. So the tables work as a great starting point if you can't go through a complete analysis. But ideally, I'm able to give the athlete that. Now, the point of trying to answer your question is that if I've got someone and I can truly say to you, this is your aerobic capacity and this is your heart rate banding that you need to be working in to maximize it, over a period of weeks, 4, 6, 8, 12, 16 weeks, whatever it is. And every individual's, their own unique model, and there's no one size fits all here. And what we'll see is that athlete will start to develop. And I can give you examples of, giving an athlete a training zone to work on. It's a heart rate zone they work on, and away they go and start training. And what you see is they'll come back in for a reassessment, 12, 16 weeks later, and they're running 2.5 Ks an hour faster than they were 16 weeks ago for the same heart rate.
Yeah.
So I realise there's two ways you can come at something. So if in my mind I want to run a 3-hour marathon, I can either go out and push my body at 14 Ks an hour, 3-hour pace, and keep pushing it till I can't do it anymore, which is, the system that the East Germans used to use in the 60s. What's world record marathon pace? Right, it's X seconds per 100. We're going to run 42 of those with a 30-second recovery in between each of them. Then that's going to come down to a 20-second and a 10-second. Then we're going to make them 200s and so on.
The theory sounds good, but the reality,
you can't work like that. Or I'm going to take my athlete and going to say, what's a realistic pace for you to run out? If your endurance capacity isn't as good as it should be, right, let's bolster that. That might take anything from 3 to 9 months to bolster that aerobic capacity. So again, this concept of, I've got a marathon in 12 weeks. We've got London coming up, we've got Manchester coming up, Liverpool coming up, all the big marathons, all the big spring marathons coming up, Paris's and all that coming up. It's almost now is too late to start your endurance training.
Yeah. Well, we'll come on to that in terms of, because I did see something we were chatting earlier of some people recommending the couch potato to marathon in 12 weeks. Which I think we both agreed is a bit. But we'll come on to what we can do in terms of right now, say all the spring marathons. But my point in terms of the effort, because when on a treadmill you can measure the speed because it's an analog thing. So there's nothing to do with terrain, wind, rain, snow, ice. So when we have that in the winter, trying to run into a headwind, let's say at 40 mile an hour, and your training says run at this pace, you're not going to hit those paces, and if you do, then your effort has gone too high, and then it becomes a bit of a nonsense. But as I say, for some people, they don't seem to see that. But
from that same point, Donato, it's exactly the same. This fancy device, I love it. I think there are things about it I think are really, really useful. One of the nightmares for me, and again, I think I've stuck a post up about it somewhere on my website hidden away, is that it gives me at the end of the training session, it gives me a recovery time. I live in a place where I can go out my front door and I can do a 20k road run, or I can go in the other direction and I can go and run over the trails on Cannock Chase. And one of my favourite runs, I'm very, very naughty, I go and run the mountain bike trails on Cannock Chase. Right. So I'll go and follow the single track and what have you. And it's lovely running. It's hard running.
Yeah.
And when I've finished, my heart rate's through the roof. I'll go and run it unstructured. I'll go and push myself. I'll go and run. My heart rate's through the roof, but my pace is through the floor. And I'll finish that session, and my Garmin will tell me sort of 35 hours, 48 hours.
Yeah. 72 hours.
It's seen heart rate's really high, pace is really low. Oh, you must be stuffed. You need lots of recovery.
Yeah.
I'll go out for a run the next day, and I'll go out and do 5 or 8k on the road, cruising along nicely, nice and relaxed. Come back, and it will go, oh, performance conditioning +5. You must have recovered really well.
Yes. The wonders of technology.
Which the algorithms are useful, but not. You've got to read more than that into the algorithms.
Yeah. I totally agree, Gary. I did do a video many moons ago, and I think it's become one of my most popular ones. Where on this wonderful device, when I first bought it, I got it on discount because they brought out the new 6, so I got whatever 30-40% off.
Yeah.
And there's so many things in there, and I thought, let's try this lactate threshold test. To cut a long story short, it didn't work. So I went through the whole process, all the steps, and at the very end, after about half an hour of hard slog, it says you have not attained the right level. So it couldn't give me a lactate threshold measurement. But it's safe to say what it does show now is a bit nonsense. But I think it's good for guidance, and I think these devices, not wanting to be sued by any of them, is they all have a caveat saying it's there for guidance, not an exact science. So, but that's what you provide. It is an exact science, isn't it, Gary?
I'm able to give someone their personal training zones for their current fitness, and from that, what I'm then able to do is give someone a bespoke training plan.
Right. So if someone was to come to you and said, I'd like one of these, let's say they're a runner and they want to do that running test, what would be involved? If they said they wanted to sign up and come to you for that, what would be involved in that test?
Right. Each appointment, I spend about 2.5 hours with people, and people will say, we've got someone's made a lovely Facebook comment. I had all the time in the day. They said they didn't have another appointment. I think we were still there 4 hours later.
Yeah.
When you come and see me, I spend 20 minutes, half an hour finding out about your background. What running you've done in the past, what your goals and aims are. So we've got an idea of who you are and what you're trying to achieve. You're then on the treadmill as a treadmill test. We're talking about a runner, and you'll be running for around about 30 to 35 minutes. We do 5-minute warm up, just get your body, loose, mobile, a bit of a stretch if you need to. And then, as I say, the warm up, face mask on, so I can measure everything that's going on. 3 stages, 3 5-minute work stages, marathon pace, half marathon pace, 10K pace. If the marathon pace, that's a bit of a finger in the sky, try and guess where the starting point is from them. And it's based on the training they're doing and everything else, and what their objections, what their objectives are. If that looks like I'm working them too hard, it might be that I actually nudge the workload steps down. If it looks like it's far too easy, one might push those workload steps on. So, those 3 5-minute workloads are, again, specific to the individual. Give them 5 minutes recovery time, and then we do the famous, infamous VO2 max test.
Right.
So we start you off at a nice steady pace, and progressively every 30 seconds, we take the treadmill pace up 0.5 K an hour. Okay. Until you can't run any faster. And the test is designed to last somewhere between 8 and 10 minutes. So again, face mask on, heart rate being monitored continuously. I've got run speed, I've got VO2, so oxygen uptake throughout, carbon dioxide throughout, respiratory exchange ratio, efficiencies, economies, everything that I can possibly get. So I've got endurance, threshold, peak, recovery. So I've now got your whole physiological profile. So, that's taken hour and a quarter of the appointment. The bit that I do in between, which I forgot about, is I do a height, weight, and body fat on everybody. Right. And again, as a runner, and I'm sure your guys are fully aware of this, but again, let's go back to Jack Daniels again. If you use the Daniels tables for example, over a marathon distance, every kilogram that you can drop in body weight, or certainly in body fat, is worth 2 minutes over a marathon distance. It's worth 30 seconds over a 10K. So, at the moment, this season I was running just over 36 for a 10K, but I'm 7 or 8 kilos over the optimal peak race weight, I should call it. So, there was probably 3.5 minutes I could have on the performances I was running this season. So, that again, as a novice runner or someone that's trying to get a time, is where's your current body fat? How quickly can we lose it? What's a sensible rate to lose it at? What's a sensible strategy to lose it at? So again, that's a different thing that we bring into the appointments.
And that's quite essential, isn't it? Because in today's modern days, we often hear these stories of certain athletes starving themselves too much, and they become too light, and they get brittle bones and all that. But we won't debate that. But obviously, you're the expert. You can work that diet out for them.
There's a massive amount of problems of either people losing weight too rapidly, or being underweight, or having body fat that's too low. And that's not just females, that's males and females. You cause all sorts of hormone imbalances, you say all sorts of, bone issues, immune function gets suppressed, you're more likely to find the athlete getting repeatedly ill, potentially injured. So, that's one of the things you can help them with in terms of the diet and nutrition. Yeah, it just gives someone targets and what's sensible. I would say, jokingly, 98% of people that come in to see me, probably even 99% of people that come in to see me, have actually got a sensible amount of body fat that they can still lose. But there are 1 or 2% that come in that we have to have the opposite discussion with. Look, you are being too lean. This isn't sensible. You could actually do with putting some weight on to help your health as opposed to your performance.
Okay.
And likewise, I've seen, and it's probably more a case of cyclists that I've seen this with, but I've seen guys who have lost weight too quickly, and they've come back for a retest, and they say dropped 5 kilos of weight, and think, oh, this is great. And then you get the fat calipers out, and you find they've lost 3 or 4 kilos of muscle mass and 1 or 2 kilos of fat. And when we actually look to come and measure their performance has dropped by 10 or 15%. So, there's this delicate balance about what's right. So, we start off introductory chat, body fats, body composition, fitness testing, and then I have an hour and a half feedback to the individual. What do those test results mean? What do they mean to you? What are your strengths and weaknesses? What are your training zones? and how would we look at putting an overview of a plan together? So, from today that I see you, what's your key event? So how would we plan the weeks or months to that key event?
Yeah.
And what would a typical training week look like, at that point for where we are now?
Yeah.
And then we can go on from that as additional level that I can then, provide people with either fully coached services or bespoke training plans where, they might say to me, look, I've got this marathon in 20 weeks time. I've signed up for a half marathon there and a 20 miler there and, club runs on a Wednesday night, but I can't train, this Tuesday, and that one's my wife's birthday. And, we can then generate in that bespoke training plan as well. That's a service that there's a lot of busy professionals that come to see me because they haven't got all the time in the world, but they still are driven and they still want to perform.
Yeah.
They've got a target, they've set themselves a goal, they want to do the best that they possibly can, but also know they haven't got, 10, 12, 15 hours a week to train. So sometimes it's maximizing 4 to 6 hours a week. How do we get the best 4 to 6 hours a week from them?
So it's basically getting the best bang for their bucks in terms of their time.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, sounds brilliant. So essentially they can have the test and then they can decide either to go with a bespoke coaching plan with yourself, or you just give them a standard.
Well, I give them an overview. I've got example training plans in my book anyway. Typical training weeks in my book, and then there's also sort of plans available that I've generated on stuff like Training Peaks that you can download a 16-week marathon plan or a 12-week half marathon plan or a 10-week 10K plan, depending on what your targets are. So they can just go off and find one of those, or they can find a coach, or they can find their own training plan. And marathons these days, it's not uncommon for your typical marathon to give you a free training plan. Which is useful, but if it's one size fits all.
Exactly.
You wouldn't go into, you wouldn't go into Marks and Spencer's, say, let's use a name. You wouldn't go to Marks and Spencer's tomorrow with a blindfold on to buy a brand new suit.
I don't know. I've heard of some people.
And someone say they're over there, and you don't try it on. You don't know what color it is.
It's like dressing in the dark, isn't it?
It's worse than dressing in the dark. If you're dressing in the dark, it's come out of your wardrobe and it's likely to fit you.
Excellent. I mean, that's an excellent segue, Gary. We mentioned earlier, we were saying about we're coming to X amount of weeks, 12 weeks for 12 weeks for London, 16 weeks to Paris, or 11 weeks to Manchester.
Yeah.
We're at that point now of you're saying it's too late to do certain things for a marathon, and obviously a lot of people may be stressing, have they done enough? What can they do in the sort of, for example, the last 12 weeks before their marathon date? So this is assuming they've already done that various amount of training. What would you suggest as a good point? Obviously we joke about that person posting out couch potato to marathon in 12 weeks. Which isn't really advisable for those of you listening. You could finish, but it might hurt afterwards. But what would you suggest in terms of what someone could practically do in the last 12 weeks?
Well, I think it depends on where their starting point is. So if we start off with the couch potato to marathon in 12 weeks, is it doable? Yes, but I'd suggest there'll be an awful lot of walking involved.
Yeah.
And it's walking, rather than walk the feed stations, it's probably walking between the feed stations. So it's a different way of looking at it. So, and again, it's this, depends on what the individual's targets are and what they're trying to achieve. So the first thing I would say with anybody, it's all about training consistency. There's no point in going out and having 2 big long runs at the weekend and then not doing anything for another five days. Or running so far and so long at the weekend that you actually physically can't do anything for another 5 days.
So it's not not to panic if they haven't done enough training to suddenly think, I've got to start cramming more training in. It's just keep it consistent.
Keep it sensible. So, even if, and people say to me, I haven't got time. Of course you've got time. Can you not find 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Most people can find 20 minutes somehow. It might be whether it's set the alarm off 15 minutes earlier and, put your run shoes on and go out for 10 minutes and back for 10 minutes, before you jump in the shower and then zip off to work. Or if you have got that 1 hour lunch break at work, it's doing 40 minutes easy in the lunch break. Mm-hmm. So it's trying to fit that in where you've got that consistent sort of 20 minutes to an hour, 2 or 3 times a week. And again, because they're short sessions, I personally think the mistake a lot of people make that are running marathons is, oh, I've only got half an hour, I've only got 45 minutes, therefore I've got to go and run eyeballs out for 45 minutes. No, I'd rather have that drip, drip, drip,
Just
and
nice, easy runs.
easy runs, time on feet,
Yeah.
and then it's doing other stuff. So, if you're commuting to work on the train, or you're London based and you're on the tube, get off a station or two early. Not necessarily run it, but walk it. Get used to being time on your feet. Try and put in extra steps.
Gary, music to my ears. This is. I keep telling people, walking is the most underrated thing. Yeah, walk.
What rather than stand and get the escalator, walk up. I flew into Heathrow Airport yesterday morning, and the number of people that were stood, and it was quite a long elevator, and the number of people that were stood it's like, well, just walk it. Walk the steps.
Yeah.
You get the same with the underground. Walk the steps. You don't necessarily have to walk the fixed stairs, but more walk the moving stairways. If you've got to move between floors at work, don't wait for the lift. Use the staircase.
Yeah.
So it's things like that. Park at the other side of the car park in the shopping centre. Just try and walk that a little bit extra. Now that's an easy one. It might be that, again, if you're commuting and you're doing that sort of commute to and from the office via public transport, that maybe you put your run kit on with a small rucksack on over a tracksuit, or over, that goes in your backpack, and you get off 2 or 3 stops early. So you turn the last 2 or 3 miles home into that run home. That's another one I find works. The other one for the guys that the guys and ladies that drive to work on a daily basis, if you try and leave, and I work this with quite a few people, if you actually leave half an hour earlier for your commute in the morning, the chances are you won't be at work half an hour earlier. The chances are you're going to be at work 45 minutes earlier, or even an hour earlier. And if you're lucky enough to have either shower facilities at work, or a health club fairly close by, get out of bed, get into your car early, and actually get to work early, and do your run from work before your workday starts.
That sounds a brilliant suggestion. I hadn't thought of that myself. I normally do my trainings before I go to work, but on walking distance to or easy public transport. But that's a great suggestion. So keep it consistent. Keep it smart. What about the long runs? Because obviously the long run is essential for what would you say time on your feet. How long would the longest long run be in terms of time on your feet?
That's probably one that I do by distance, and it probably depends on what your goals and aims are. If I've got somebody that's looking at sub 3:30, we've got to look at least 2, maybe 3 22, 23 mile runs. If we've got someone that's looking at sub 3, I'd probably say you need to do a 28 mile, even a 29 mile run.
Really?
Right?
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking at that sort of performance level, the capacity to know that you've gone out and run over marathon distance, albeit at a much slower pace, it gives them the peace of mind that, yes, I know I can do this. I mean,
so it's working on the psychology.
Yeah, as well. I know I can be running for 3.5 hours. Target race time's 2 hours 45, but I know I can run for 3.5. This is going to be a doddle. I mean, my first couple of marathons, I ran into problems, typically 21, 23 miles, because my biggest, I've done a couple of 20, I've done the classic, there's a spring 20-mile race, I'll do that. I've actually stormed around a 20-mile race.
That
was a doddle, I'm on for 2.
Last 6 miles.
Yeah. And it's just such a big jump. It is such a big jump. So, for someone that's looking for maybe the 3:15 to 3:45 window, you probably want a long run of 20 to 22 miles. And if you can do 2 of them, that's absolutely fabulous. If you're looking for, sub 3, 2:45, you probably need to do at least a marathon distance, probably 6 or 7 weeks out. It's not, it's not 3 weeks.
Not
out.
2 weeks before.
No.
You said 3 weeks. I mean, I've heard of people where 2 weeks before they're running 26 miles, which is not a good idea, because we should be in tapering mode then. How many weeks would you suggest tapering?
2 to 3, depending on the training level that you're at.
That sounds excellent. I mean, there's some really good common sense tips there, Gary, and I really do appreciate it. And as I was saying earlier, for those who are listening and watching, And I'm sure Gary I'd love to have you back on for another chat where we can talk on some specifics. And if people want to leave some questions, comments below for Gary, we'll be dipping in and out, answering them ourselves in terms of specific questions. Where can they find you on the interwebs and social web? Obviously, the shirt there, Sports Test.
Sports Test, just type it into your
web
browser.
Yeah, Sports Test, all one word.
All one word. And if you use the .co.uk, then you'll definitely find me.
Definitely find you. That's brilliant. Thank you so much for your time, Gary. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, and very insightful with some useful tips and hints there. So remember, guys, work smart and not hard. Thank you all so much for listening, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Thank you again, Gary.
Great. Thanks, Donato.
Bye-bye.